When Barron Trump walked into a high-end eatery, he did not anticipate his MAGA chapeau to spark a public showdown. What happened next not only shocked the director but left an entire megacity talking. It was a sunny autumn in Los Angeles, the kind that tempts you to decelerate down and savor the day. Barron Trump, now in his late teens, had just wrapped up a quiet morning of reading and decided to treat himself to lunch. He chose LA Terrace, a famed eatery, known for its mix of complication and exclusivity, the kind of place where every table seems to hold a story. Celebrities, CEOs, influencers, he'd been there before, always enjoying the serene atmosphere and impeccable service. As he walked through the glass doors, Barron stood out not just because of his elevation, but because of the bright red MAGA chapeau perched on his head. He wore it with ease, the way one wears commodity. They are comfortable with not intending to provoke, but simply expressing a part of themselves. He was saluted by the visitant, a woman in her medial 30s with a polished address, who seated him near a corner table. The eatery was not crowded. Many beaneries belted their wine and changed muted exchanges. Barron opened the menu. His expression, calm as he scrutinized for his favorite dish, he did not notice the ganders at first. A man at the coming table nudging his mate, a couple of delay staff brooding near the bar. But also the director surfaced. The man, medial 40s, sharp suit, sharp voice, walked hastily to Barron's table, his face tight with determination. "Excuse me," he said loud enough to draw attention. "We have a policy against political vesture. Then I am going to have to ask you to remove the chapeau." Barron looked up. Surprised but not rattled, he removed his earbuds and placed them on the table. "I was not apprehensive of any policy like that," he replied calmly. His voice was steady, regardful, but firm. "It's written in our law of conduct," the director claimed, waving vaguely towards the entrance. "We want this to be a neutral space for all guests." Barron lifted his head slightly, importing his options. He glanced around. Some beaneries were pretending not to hear, while others openly goggled. "I am not trying to beget any trouble," he said, keeping his tone neutral. "I am just then for lunch." The director's station strengthened. "You need to take the chapeau off, or I will have to ask you to leave." Barron broke his expression, undecipherable also. With a slight nod, he pushed his president back and stood. "If that is how you feel," he said unevenly. "Also, I will leave the room." Fell into an awkward hush as Barron picked up his things. He left behind his untouched glass of water, walking out of the eatery without another word, the door unrestricted vocally behind him. But the pressure inside dallied thick as bank. Outside the eatery, Barron broke for a moment, letting the warm California breath encounter against his face. He acclimated, his chapeau slightly as if reaffirming his choice to wear it, and took a deep breath. He was not angry, frustrated perhaps, but further than anything, he felt disappointed. He had always been tutored to treat people with kindness. Indeed, when dissensions arose, and this felt like a treason of that principle. Inside the eatery was a buzz with quiet murmurs. A server leaned in to tail to the director. "Do you suppose that was a good idea?" "That's him." The director gestured him off. "D. Cannot make exceptions if we let him stay. It sends the wrong communication. This is my eatery, and I will run it as I see fit." Meanwhile, Barron walked a many blocks down to a small public domain. He set up an empty bench and sat down, pulling out his phone. He began codifying first to his mama, letting her know what had happened, and also to a many close musketeers. He was not looking for sympathy, just clarity. Was he overreacting? Was the director justified? Within twinkles, replies started pouring in. One friend texted, "That is insane. They should not have treated you like that." Another added, "You handled it better than I would have." As he scrolled through his dispatches, an idea began to form in his mind. He was not interested in vengeance or a public showdown, rather. He saw an occasion, commodity formative, commodity meaningful. If the eatery wanted to avoid political statements also, why not punctuate the significance of concinnity and understanding? Rather, Barron stood up, determination sparking in his eyes. He started making calls, his voice calm but filled with purpose. "Hey, I need your help with commodity," he said into the receiver, the first of numerous exchanges that would set his plan in stir back at the eatery. The atmosphere was uneasy. Word of what had happened began spreading through social media. As other beaneries participated their accounts online, they demurred out Barron Trump for a chapeau. One post read, accompanied by a vague print of the incident. Another chimed in freedom of expression. Guess not at LA Terraza. The director, scrolling through his phone at the bar, began to feel a knot form in his stomach. The comment section was formally filling up, and not all of it was probative. Let them talk, he murmured to himself, trying to shake off the growing sense of remorse. But deep down he knew the situation was twisting out of control. By the time Barron returned home, the incident had formally started making swells online, and many original influencers had picked up the story, their captions ranging from probative to centralizing. Barron glanced at the posts compactly, but did not dwell on them. He was not interested in fueling drama or dividing people further. His focus was on doing commodity that could turn this negativity into a positive outgrowth. Sitting at his office, Barron recorded down notes in a small leather-bound tablet he allowed about the relations he would have that day, not just with the director, but with the people watching, the silent judgments, the curious gapes. What could he do that would encourage dialogue rather than conflict? He wanted to challenge the divisiveness, but in a way that felt particular and poignant. The idea clicked nearly out of nowhere. Public fundraiser. Not just any fundraiser, but one with a clear, unifying communication. He envisaged an event that would support depressed communities, particularly fastening on creating safe spaces for open discussion and understanding. He picked up his phone and made a call. "Hi, this is Barron Trump. I need some advice on organizing a charity event." "Yes, it's critical. Could we meet here after?" The person on the other end sounded surprised, but snappily agreed. As the evening progressed, Barron's plan took shape. He drafted an offer for the fundraiser, deciding to set it up right outside LA Terrace. He wanted the position to emphasize the communication that indeed in places of conflict concinnity could find its way. A close friend agreed to help with logistics, and within hours the bus were in stir. Meanwhile, at the eatery, the fallout was enhancing. The director's decision was no longer a private matter. It had become a public debate. News outlets began reporting on the incident, quoting viewer accounts. Some papers painted Barron as a victim of dogmatism, while others defended the eatery's right to apply its programs. The eatery's social media runners were swamped with commentary. Some druggies praised the director for standing his ground, but others called for boycotts, arguing that the decision stank of insincerity. One comment read, "So important for a neutral space, remonstrating someone out is not neutral. It's picking a side." The staff at LA Terraza could feel the pressure. Regular guests canceled reservations, and the formerly bustling eatery was noticeably quieter. The director, who had originally felt confident about his station, now set up himself, scuffling with alternate studies. He told himself it would blow over, but deep down he was not so sure. As night fell, Barron prepared for what was to come. He knew the fundraiser wouldn't abolish the incident, but he hoped it could shift the focus towards commodity. Formative, the world did not need further crying matches. It demanded moments of connection, indeed in the most doubtful circumstances. The following morning, the quiet block in front of LA Terraza began to transfigure exchanges, disburdened outfit as levies set up tables, banners, and a small stage. Barron stood at the center of it all, overseeing the arrangements. The banner above the stage read in bold letters, "United, we stand erecting islands, not walls." He'd reached out to several associations that concentrated on community structure, youth mentorship, and dialogue facilitation. The fundraiser was not just about raising plutocrat. It was about creating a space where people from different walks of life could come together. Food exchanges, live music, and sales for original charities lined the sidewalk, turning what had been a source of conflict into a vibrant community event. By noon, the crowd started to gather. Families, youthful professionals, activists, and indeed many familiar faces from social media showed up. Barron took the microphone to address the followership. His voice was steady but filled with emotion. "History, I was asked to leave this eatery because of a chapeau. That's okay. I admire their programs indeed if I do not agree with them. But what struck me was not just being turned down. It was the bigger picture. We've come so quick to judge each other, to take sides, to shut down exchanges. That's not who we can do better." The crowd erupted in applause, and Barron continued, "This event is not about me, and it's not about them. It's about all of us chancing ways to hear, to understand, and to come together. The finances we raised moment will go toward programs that foster dialogue and addition. Thank you for being then and proving that concinnity is stronger than division." The applause was louder this time, and Barron stepped off the stage shaking hands and thanking attendees tête-à-tête. His calm address and thoughtful words reverberated deeply with those present, numerous of whom had come out of curiosity, but left feeling inspired. Inside LA Terrace, the scene was relatively different. The director stood at the window watching the event unfold. He had not anticipated Barron to respond in this way, and it left him disaccorded. Some of his staff had stepped outside to join the fundraiser, unfit to repel the pull of the lively music and sense of fellowship. One server, who had been there the day before, returned to the bar and said, "Still, you should go out there, talk to him." The director strengthened. "This is not my fight, perhaps not." The server replied, "But it's surely your chance." The director did not respond, but his expression softened. He poured himself a glass of water and watched as the crowd outside continued to grow commodity about the scene. Dragged at him a feeling he had not allowed himself to admit until now, as the day wore on. The fundraiser, outside LA Terrace, came the talk of the city. Social media was ablaze with live aqueducts prints and hashtags like "Had Structure Islands" and "Had United." We stand all praising Barron's poise and the positive communication he was spreading. The event attracted further than just locals. News crews arrived, landing the vibrant energy of the crowd and Barron's important speeches inside the eatery. It was another story. The formerly busy dining room was eerily quiet. Tables that were generally reserved weeks in advance now sat empty, and the many patrons who did arrive sounded distracted, glancing outdoors at the fundraiser as if they were missing out on commodity meaningful. The director tried to concentrate on his work, but the growing pressure among his staff was insolvable to ignore. A garçon approached him cautiously. "Roughly, guests have been asking about the event. They're saying it looks inconceivable and perhaps we should go out there." The director's jaw tensed, but he did not respond. Rather, he retreated to his office, closing the door behind him. He sat at his office, gaping at his computer screen where dozens of emails swamped in complaints from guests, cancellation notices, and indeed a many cutting reviews from original media outlets. One dispatch stood out. It was from a regular client who had always been cordial and probative. The communication read, "I have always loved LA Terrace, but history's incident was deeply disappointing. Remonstrating. Someone out for their particular beliefs isn't the impartiality you claim to stand for. It's divisive. I hope you will find a way to make this right." The words hit harder than he anticipated. He leaned back in his president, running a hand through his hair. Was he wrong? Had his decision really been about impartiality, or was it about commodity differently? Entirely commodity. He did not want to admit to himself. Meanwhile, outside, the event had reached its peak. A original jazz band played on stage. Children laughed as they painted showpieces at an art cell, and donation boxes overflowed with benefactions. Barron was far and wide, shaking hands, listening to people's stories, and indeed posing for selfies. He radiated a calm confidence, but it was not trim or performative. It was genuine, the kind of countenance that comes from knowing you are doing commodity that truly matters. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm gleam over the scene, a buzz gurgled through the crowd. People turned toward the eatery doors where the director had just stepped out. He dithered on the way, conforming his tie nervously ahead, making his way toward Barron. The crowd parted slightly, their chatter fading as they watched the two men approach each other. Barron saw him coming and offered a small, polite smile. He did not blench or step back. Rather, he extended his hand. The director dithered for a split alternate before taking it. "I'd like to talk," he said, still his voice nearly drowned out by the noise around them. "Of course," Barron replied, waving toward a quieter spot near the edge of the event. They walked together, the crowd watching, hardly but hypercritically giving them space. Barron and the director stopped, near the edge of the event where the music and chatter were softer, allowing them to speak freely. The director's face, generally composed and commanding, now carried a hint of apprehension. He glanced at the crowd behind them, also back at Barron. "I need to start by saying I did not handle history well," the director began, his voice low. "I allowed I was doing what was stylish for my eatery, for my staff, But I realize now that I made a mistake. I judged you, and I acted out of fear, not fairness. Barron heeded hardly, his expression calm but encouraging. It takes courage to admit when you are wrong, he said after a moment. Thank you for saying that. The director exhaled as if a weight had been lifted. Watching what you've done, then moment, it's humbling. You could have turned this into a public attack on my business, but rather you created commodity positive. That's not commodity. Most people would do. Barron smiled noiselessly. I do not suppose the world needs further wrathfulness or division. What happened history could have just added to the noise, but I wanted to show that there is a better way. The director jounced sluggishly. You did. And I'd like to support what you are doing. Then, if there is a way for me or the eatery to contribute, I'd be happy to. Barron considered this for a moment before responding. I suppose the stylish way to contribute is to reflect on how we treat each other. Programs are important, but they should now come at the expenditure of kindness and understanding. Perhaps LA Terrazza could host an event like this. One commodity that brings people together, rather of pushing them piecemeal. The director blinked, easily caught off guard by the suggestion, but also a small smile dragged at the corner of his mouth. I suppose that is a great idea. Let's make it be. They shook hands again, this time with genuine warmth. The crowd, seeing the resolution, began to hail. It was not the kind of forced, polite clapping Bone might anticipate. It was sincere, a sign that everyone honored the significance of the moment as the event wound down. Barron took the stage one last time to thank everyone who had come out to support the cause. He ended his speech with a simple but important communication. We all make miscalculations. What matters is how we choose to grow from them. Moment was not just about raising plutocrat. It was about showing that indeed, when we differ, we can still find common ground. Thank you for proving that concinnity is not just possible, it's necessary. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices filling the air with stopgap and energy as the sun set over Los Angeles. Barron stood with his musketeers and family, watching as the last of the attendees trickled out, carrying with them not just recollections of the event but the communication it represented. The story leaves us with a memorial that conflicts, big or small, don't have to end in bitterness or division. By choosing grace, understanding, and visionary results, we can turn indeed the most grueling moments into openings for connection and growth.